Okay, so, welcome back. I have some more good news for you here. I mentioned before about Kerberos and Samba 4. This is really going to focus on Kerberos, but I will talk a little bit about the Samba plugin for NetDrive. Neil touched on earlier. So, Kerberos. I used to think that Kerberos was some off-the-wall Microsoft thing. Kerberos had nothing to do with Microsoft. Microsoft signed on to Kerberos, not the other way around. Slide, please.
Yeah.
So Kerberos was developed at MIT in the 1980s as part of their project with people. Now, don't ask me questions about what was the project with people. It was some massive computer update that they were doing. And they wanted some type of secure authentication.
Yeah.
So Kerberos, or Cerberus, is a three-headed dog, right? Well, in this case, the name fits, and the name was chosen because we really do have a three-headed dog. We have a client, we have a server, and we have a trusted third party in between. By client, we mean a user of resources. By server, we mean a provider of resources. And the trusted third party is the authentication server, which may not be the provider of resources. It does provide strong authentication. It uses secret key cryptography. And the passwords, this is the important part about it, the passwords are never sent over the wire. I remember having an interesting conversation at a Wi-Fi conference some years ago in San Jose, I think. San Jose. And, no, I'm sorry, I was in San Francisco at the Wi-Fi conference. And one of the acquaintances I met there that day was using Kismet, which is a network sniffing tool. And he was just watching people check their email. And he said, look, there's so-and-so at blah, 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 and his password is X, blah, blah, blah. Because it was all sent in clear text, over the air, unencrypted. That doesn't happen with Kerberos. When you log into Kerberos, your password never leaves your machine. Next slide, please. How does it do that? It does that with a secret key. When your password is created on the server creates a key. When you enter that password on your machine, there's a key that's created. The secret key is matched. So you really authenticate to your local machine. In other words, the server presents your machine with a secret key. You enter your password when asked. And your system generates the secret key based upon the password you enter. It should match the secret key that was sent to you. If it does, then you're able to tell the server the secret keys match. Now, if you tell the server the secret keys match and they don't match, that doesn't work. So you can't just tell the server, yes, the keys match. The point is that really the password goes from your keyboard to the local Kerberos client. That's as far as it travels. So it doesn't get loose. It doesn't get loose. It's stored on the server, and it's stored in your head when you type it out. Other than that, that's the end of it. So the credentials are secure. Microsoft decided that they would sign on to this nifty idea. And in Windows 2000, they started to employ Kerberos natively. The problem for us, of course, a lot of us will recall, is that the IBM peer networking had to be, you needed to tone down the security level on the Microsoft Windows 2000 server to accept an OS2 client connecting to it using the old IBM peer stuff. Because the authentication doesn't work. It's not as tight as Kerberos. So you need to tell the Windows 2000 server to accept the older authentication methods. The credentials are secure. You get a ticket when you authenticate. The ticket granting server sends you a ticket. That ticket is your pass to the resources that are associated, to the resources to which that ticket has been granted access. So if the server knows that a valid ticket with your name on it is granted access to share X, Y, Z, then when you want to access share X, Y, and Z, you present your ticket and the server that's sharing X, Y, and Z says, oh, your ticket's valid, so you're allowed to access it. The ticket means everything. Destroy the ticket, you logged out. You have no proof to the server that you're authenticated. You need to get another ticket. Tickets expire in Kerberos. So the machine that was logged in 5 years ago and it's still logged in, that doesn't happen natively in Kerberos. Something else has to happen to renew the ticket and keep a user logged in, or the user will log out over time, automatically. And tickets, you can request a ticket that is renewable and then renew that ticket, as I say, should you need to do it. By default, 10 hours is a Kerberos expiration period. But you could request a ticket that expires in less time than that. If the server's configured for 10 hours, and you say, I want a ticket that's good for 6 hours, you'll get a ticket that's good for 6 hours. If you say to a server that's configured for 10 hours, I want a ticket that's good for 48 hours. The server says, sorry, best I can do is 10 hours. Come back in 10 hours and you know. And then what you do when you have that ticket, let's say you ask for a 6-hour ticket and you're not done with your work, is you request a renewal on that ticket. And you get a renewed ticket, you've got another 6 hours to go before you get automatically disconnected. Next slide, please. So there are 3 main implementations of Kerberos. MIT, which is the original, Heimdal, which is now incorporated in Samba 4, and New Shishi. I don't know a lot about New Shishi. The neat thing about them is that, in general, they function the same way, and they're interoperable. So I can use MIT or Heimdal, and I don't really care whether the server is Windows and it accepts Kerberos Authentication, or whether it's a Linux box and it's using MIT Kerberos or it's using Heimdal. They're all interchangeable. And the syntax for the Kerberos client is essentially the same between them. There are some nuances, like with anything like that. There are some commands that work a little bit differently on one than on the other. Heimdal is pretty good. It's actively maintained. When we started the project, I sort of signed on to the Heimdal mailing lists to see what updates were being done. It's not Firefox, thankfully. Changes don't happen that rapidly. Version 5, which is out now, has been out for quite a while. Changes are slow, but they're slow by necessity. The technology is very mature, it's very stable, it requires very little maintenance. Every now and again, someone will come up with something, post a ticket, the ticket gets addressed, the ticket gets fixed, source code gets updated, and voila, we've got a new build.
Did Microsoft pick one of these 3, or did they develop their own implementation?
They use their own implementation. They use their own, so we can use any of them, really. As I say, we switched over to using Heimdal because that's what's bundled in Samba 4. When we were doing our testing with Samba 3.5 and 3.6, we were actually using MIT Kerberos when we started the development project. Now, Samba 4 includes the Kerberos components, and it's Heimdal, so we're using Heimdal. And we have a full implementation of the Heimdal client. Next. So what can we do with Kerberos? We can authenticate for various things, shared drives and directories being first and foremost. I said other devices and services there. Well, printers. You can have a printer that accepts Kerberos authentication. It won't let you print in color until you authenticate that you're really allowed to use that color toner at $500 a cartridge. FTP. You know what? I made an interesting discovery just recently on my Kerberos test box. I normally use NCFTP as my command line FTP client. I happen to fire up the venerable IBM FTP client, and it said to me, trying GSS API. GSS API is a component that we have it in our Kerberos build, which is implemented as a DLL for us, which allows you to plug in different types of authentication mechanisms to different applications. I was surprised that our IBM FTP client recognized GSS API.
Why?
It didn't?
No, that's the FTP exec that comes with that's coming in our package. There's an FTP exec.
There's an FTP in the Heimdal package?
Yes. Well, I'm not sure if it's in the Heimdal package or one of those packages because I ran into the same thing. I had to track it down. There's an FTP.exec that's in there.
I could have sworn that what I saw said copyright IBM and it was the FTP client. All right, maybe.
Really certain not.
All right, that would make a lot more sense to me because the thought that IBM would have had support for Kerberos authentication in their FTP client.
Before it existed.
No, it wouldn't have been before it existed. Remember, MIT developed Kerberos in '85. So it was certainly around when OS 2 was being
I think, now, I thought that MIT actually did that in a contract with Berkeley. Defense Advanced Research Project.
It's possible. It's certainly possible, Chuck. I don't know.
Because I saw it on secure sites that I handled in Europe. Intelligence sites, NSA sites.
I know
That was before the days of PCs.
Sure.
but there's FTP, I think there's a telnet in there too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
There is a telnet, and of course, SMB client is part of Samba 4.
But anyway, but in that, I don't remember which package brought it in, but that FTP exact, because I run the FTP quite a bit. And for as soon as I put put all that in there, FTP, and I get that error, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And I ended up,
Try that FTP client and see how I like it.
and it just, but it comes in, it fell in before, it was in the.
I should look, I mean, it's quite possible that on my test machine, I have that in path before it would hit. Because the normal FTP EXE is in what, TCP/IP?
TCP/IP pin, I think, or it could be an NPTN pin, I don't know if it's
Yeah,
that or not.
and I'll bet that I have my Heimdal directory ahead of that. All right, now I have to go look.
But there's also like an FTP daemon in there too, I think.
So you can actually run the FTP server that's, because I was going to suggest to Peter that might be something to look at implementing, although he doesn't implement any kind of SFTP in his FTP server, which I'd like him to do, but he's got enough stuff on his plate. I feel like every time I make an interesting suggestion for FTP server, it's interesting to me at the time, and then he spends time doing it, and then by the time he's got it all done and ready, I've moved on to something else, and then I feel guilty that I even got him started. So you can, with Kerberos, you can access network shares controlled by MS Active Directory. Even with Active Directory configured for the tightest security that it will do. We put that within quotations, right? It's Redmond, Washington. Security, that's, but whatever you can configure Access Directory to accept, to narrow down the client, the acceptable clients, Kerberos can authenticate. And you can do away with IBM Peer services, file and printer sharing when using Samba 4, as Neil discussed before. Next slide, please. So why would I want to use Kerberos instead of IBM Peer? Well, LAN Manager uses LM hashes for passwords, which are really, it's one step beyond clear text. They're so easily crackable that it's sort of like using web encryption on Wi-Fi. It's like, why bother? It's like more trouble encrypting than it's worth. You might as well just print out your password and send it around in a memo to everyone in the office. LM hashes are fully sent across the wires. So when you authenticate to IBM peer services, you send your username, you send your password. The server says, I know your username, and that's your password. And now everyone else does too. And then you're authenticated. And Windows boxes, Windows servers, out of the box, will not accept LM hashes. You have to configure the registry to ease off that far in its security restrictions to allow LM hashes. And that means that you have to do that for every client on the network. So if you have a mixed network of Windows, Linux, and OS2 boxes, and you have a Windows server, and your OS2 box can only do IBM peer services, you have to back off the security on your Windows server to accept those LAN-MAN hashes, and that means that everything is now able to send LAN-MAN hashes.
Well, you can actually make an exception for a specific workstation that has a specific NetBIOS name. I would think that that wants to apply.
Yes, NetBIOS name, but if you're using TCP, well, of course, if you're using only TCP/IP and no NetBIOS, then you don't have IBM peer on that one. So you're right. In that regard, you're absolutely right. If you're in a pure IP environment with no NetBIOS, you wouldn't be using IBM peer services.
I mean, you can use NetBIOS over TCP/IP to connect to a...
You still need to have the NetBIOS name. So you're right. You can change the authentication based on NetBIOS name. So yeah, you're right. You can do that per workstation name.
And Windows 2012 still has NetBIOS name compatibility.
It does. It does.
And it's kind of sneaky because Microsoft is trying to push it away, but in so many printers, there is a Samba share connected. There's Samba built into the printer engine to make network connections in some cases. So that's why most of those printers still have some form of authentication.
Is it only the peer that does that lowest level of authentication? Like if you had the, not peer, but the regular LAN server, LAN manager?
Same thing.
It's the same thing?
Same thing.
Okay.
It does, when it does file transfers, it uses SMB1. Remember, Samba is called Samba because it's a play on SMB, server message block, right? We're now up to SMB3, which is the most secure level, which really isn't 3, it's SMB 2.2, dialect 3.0. LAN Manager, IBM Peer, File and Print Services, all of that does SMB1. That's all it does. That's the most secure file transfer that it will do. It does NTLM authentication, LAN-MAN. Actually, is LAN-MAN hash lower than NTLM? You don't remember. I can't recall, but it's all the same, and it's very, very weak. And this is extremely tight. And with the Samba 4 client that we have, we do SMB3 for file transfers. And as I say, tighter security and compliance with today's standards. So if you get one of those little NAS boxes, you might need to make special allowances on that little NAS box if you want to do file sharing with it in order to accept IBM peer. The Samba plugin may work, but you can enhance the security for that by using Kerberos authentication to the Samba server in that little NAS box.
And those things have both the authentication server and the server.
In that case, yes. Yes, the ticket granting server in that case is just a software component that runs in that little box right alongside the Samba server. running on. Excellent question. Next slide, right? So as I said, Windows servers utilize Kerberos natively, and authentication against Active Directory is transparent, meaning there's nothing that has to be done on the Active Directory side to say, well, I have a Kerberos client that wants to authenticate to you. No, when you run, to authenticate, you'll see in a later slide, the command is kinit. The Windows server could care less what the command is. It just knows that you want to authenticate, and it will authenticate. It does Kerberos out of the box. Next slide, please. So the initial builds of Kerberos 5, as I said, were based on MIT Kerberos. And Kerberos 5 is the 5th generation of Kerberos. There was a Kerberos 4, 3, 2, and original Kerberos. So we're up to level 5. We've been at 5 for quite some time, and I have absolutely no idea if and when we'll ever see Kerberos 6. There's really no need for it. There are very minor changes to Kerberos along the way at this point. So on OS 2, we're able to do successful ticket acquisition, renewal, and destruction, that's logout, against Active Directory on Windows 2008 Release 2 and 2012 Release 2. We tested against both of those. Next slide. And we've also tested on lesser systems. We've tested on Windows 7. We've tested against XP. So why are we using Heimdal? Well, because it's part of Samba 4. And there's been some discussion on the Samba list about breaking out Heimdal so that, in other words, on Linux, you might already have MIT Kerberos installed. Well, could you just use the installed MIT Kerberos? Well, the answer is yes, but Samba 4 isn't designed for that. So if someone should get ambitious, it could be done to use modular Kerberos, but right now it's pretty much built in the same tree. We do have a working implementation of Heimdal Kerberos 5, the full client. So not just what goes into Samba 4, but to make Samba 4 aware of that, but all the client tools that you would need for Kerberos. And as I say, successful ticket acquisition. We've tested it, it works. Next, please. This gives you a pretty decent overview of how the Kerberos authentication works. Up at the top is the authentication server. The authentication request goes across. The request is acknowledged, a ticket is granted to the client. The client authenticates. And then a ticket is granted to the client, and then the ticket presents that client to the server hosting the service to which the client wants to connect. And then that server says, here's your connection, and it's good as long as your ticket is good. So it ties into your ticket expiration.
So how does, at the very beginning of that exchange there, you said that the password is turned into a ticket locally in your box.
Yes.
How does that happen? How does it know what to turn, what goes on there? Or is that out of the scope of this discussion?
Well, it's a bit technical, but
Okay.
essentially the ticket granting server sends a secret key, encrypted,
The ticket granting service runs on the authentication?
on the authentication server to the client. The client asks for a password, and then it compares the secret key that's generated with that password to what was handed from the server.
That's an encryption key? So
It's not the same thing as we talk about encryption keys.
but it's the same idea?
Yeah, it's pretty tightly.
It's used to generate the ticket that then is returned?
You can't go backwards from a secret key and generate the original
Gotcha.
thing. And once the ticket granting server is satisfied that the client does have a matching secret key, then it grants a ticket to the client. And the ticket says, this is your authentication realm, the domain, if you will, and this is when your ticket expires. At that point, the client can then present that ticket to a server, and the server says, well, you're in my authentication realm, and with your name on the ticket, you're allowed to access this share if you want. Or, you know what? I have that share, but you're not authorized to access it, even with your ticket. So then you get refused access to it. Without a ticket, you just get refused to do it.
So how does the ticket is sent into clear?
No, the ticket to the...
From the authentication server to the client?
The ticket is sent, the ticket is not further encrypted, but it's not clear text.
It's a string of numbers?
It's in binary.
Fine, okay. So why couldn't that be intercepted and presented? Is it further limited by an IP address you're logging on from or something like that?
It can be. The service server is aware of what secret key can be generated in that ticket. So the service server has to know that the ticket is a valid ticket and it hasn't been forged. And it has a way of determining. That's beyond the scope of this discussion.
Wikipedia has a good explanation.
Wikipedia's got pretty good, and I've got resources at the end of the presentation. You know, it's a pretty involved thing. Next slide, please. So here you go. You want to authenticate. So at the command line, typing K in it, and you type your username, and what should come back to you is your username at your default realm, and your default realm is defined in your KRB5 conf, which is a plain text file that's stored in MPTN, etc., wherever your etc. directory is. And then it'll prompt you with a password. You enter the password, and it will generate the secret key and compare it to what the server said the secret key should be. Assuming your authentication is successful, you should get a ticket. Next slide. And to see what your tickets look like, because you can have multiple tickets, you can authenticate to multiple ticket granting servers and get different tickets for different things. So if you run KList, now on MIT Heimdal, all you need to do is type KList. On MIT Kerberos, all you need to do is type KList. On Heimdal, it's KList list, because KList does other things. And so you'll get something like credentials cache, because it caches the credentials not only in memory, but it writes them to a file on disk. And it'll give you your username at your default realm, listed as the principal. And then this is all one line underneath here. It tells you when the ticket was issued, when it expires, and the ticket granting server's default realm at default realm will be listed on the end. And don't ask me why that syntax is like that. That's Kerberos. Again, that's beyond the scope of this conversation. But you should be able to tell that you've got a ticket. If you don't have a ticket, your authentication didn't work. Something was wrong.
And you wouldn't be in that list.
You wouldn't have a ticket at all. Wouldn't have a ticket at all. For a while, I couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting tickets. And then I remembered that I kept entering the wrong password.
We're driving fast.
Next slide, please. So, how do we do a Samba 4 drive mapping with Kerberos Authentication? Well, in the Samba 4 plugin for NetDrive, we have a couple extra checkboxes. You know where that checkbox is located to support EA? Oh, up on the right when you're mapping something in NetDrive? Well, we have two more checkboxes. One of them is support KRB5, and the other one is support NTLM v1. Because by default, we don't even support NTLM v1. It's not secure enough. We have to override that default and specifically tell it if we need to connect to an older resource to use NTLM v1.
Is there something that makes those defaulted one way or the other? Because mine defaults to checking the NTL.
Oh, by default, all of them are checked right now. I think that Paul and I are still going back and forth as to what I think that he should really uncheck the use NTLM v1 and check KRV5. I don't know, maybe everyone's not going to be using Kerberos, so maybe we shouldn't automatically check KRV5 by default either. We need to have that discussion on the Samba dev list.
Is there some
Well,
firm choice?
the best thing would be to do is let the user make that decision whether it's default.
Whether to, yeah, exactly. Paul hasn't quite got the rest of the options down for the plugin yet. As we get closer to that, we'll do that.
You can always add a flashing screen. Are you really sure you want?
Are you sure? Are you really sure?
Are you really sure?
Do you want to change your mind?
So you're going to set the server name and the share name in the dialog. I should have put screenshots in here like Neil did in his, because his screenshots were nice. But you set the server name and the share name, and you can leave the username and the password blank, because once you check the box to support KRV5, the plugin could care less whether you have any username or password in there. It doesn't use them. It doesn't use them at all. And as long as your ticket is valid, and of course as long as you've got the server and share name correct, you should be able to click OK and have a map drive. Next slide, please. So ticket expiration, as I mentioned, tickets normally expire after 10 hours. Windows servers will expire after 10 hours by default. You can ask for a renewable ticket with the renewable option. And if you have a renewable ticket, because not all tickets are renewable, obviously, since I said you had to ask for a renewable ticket, you use the -R option, single dash uppercase R, and it will renew the ticket you have for another default period. And you can tell it specifically you want to only renew it for a shorter period of time. You can do that also with additional options.
You said you could have multiple tickets, I don't know which one you're talking about.
I did these examples specifically with the idea that you would only have one ticket. Otherwise, you need to specify the ticket you're renewing. That's a little more involved, but all that you need to do is you need to enter principal at realm. And then it knows which ticket you want to renew. Next slide. Now, if you want to log out, there's no such thing as logging out in Kerberos. You don't log out. You have a ticket. There's no logging out. The server says, I gave you a ticket. And it's like you're at the train station, and you say to the conductor, I want to give up my seat. He says, you've got a ticket. Well, the best thing you can do with it is you can destroy your ticket. Now you've given up your seat. So we have K-destroy. Again, if you only have one ticket, all you need to do is type K-destroy, and it will destroy the one ticket that you have. Otherwise, it will destroy all the tickets that you have. Otherwise, if you only wanted to destroy a particular ticket, you can say K-destroy username at realm, and it will destroy just that ticket. Once the ticket is destroyed, you effectively have given up your access to that shared resource. Next slide, please. So what do we have on the to-do list with Kerberos right now? We have some various minor issues. Right now, when it asks you for the password and you type it in, it echoes it right back to the screen. Well, that's not really very practical for obvious reasons. So we're going to fix that. A graphical ticket manager. I'm talking to Alex Taylor about doing that. Everyone should be very happy about Alex Taylor doing that because Alex does the absolute best user interfaces for anything. If I ever designed a coffee maker, I would want Alex to do the user interface design. So OS 10 has a Kerberos ticket manager. When you do a login on Mac OS 10 and it's Kerberos, it will allow you to manage your ticket, so you can renew your ticket, destroy your ticket, check the status of your ticket. We need something like that. And we also need it implemented as an X Center widget. So that's also on the roadmap to be able to do that. The point is to be able to use Kerberos as easily as you would use anything else to log in and authenticate. So that once again, you do not have to configure something specially to support an OS 2 machine. If what you have supports Kerberos Authentication, you should be able to do a Kerberos login and then manage that login from the get-go. More utilities that are Kerberos aware, which for instance use GSS API. So that would be kind of nice if we had an FTP client that handled Kerberos. I haven't thought about a lot of other utilities, but there could be many of them, many network attached resources that support Kerberos. And of course, we want to have tighter integration with the Samba project, and we're working on doing that. We're trying to get as close to the rest of the Samba project as possible. As I say, our focus has been on the Samba client, Samba 4 client using Kerberos, but ideally we want to have a Samba 4 server that supports Kerberos authentication as well. Next slide. So it's a Netlabs project. If you go to track.netlabs.org/Kerberos, you'll see what we have up so far. We are working in concert with the Samba 4 developers. The project is fully supported by Arkanoe, and we will provide commercial support for this for Kerberos when it's generally available for everyone to use. And Bitwise will, why did I put that up there? Well, it's fully supported by Bitwise Works, yes. There are developers at Bitwise who are working on the project with us as well. And we have a pretty solid list of developers. Paul Smedley has been, when I say instrumental, that's not even half of it. Paul has put tens of hours into making this work. It's an interesting thing because Kerberos was proposed, Kerberos support was proposed by Bart Van Leeuwen in 2007 or so, and there was some early work that Paul was involved with doing with Bart to get it working using the Kerberos components in Java, which were sort of in Java already, so we got them by default. Not that they really had any development for OS 2. And they had actually gotten a version of Samba to work using those Java Kerberos components. But now, the environment for porting Linux applications over to OS 2 is so much more stable that it made much more sense to just go for the Kerberos source and port that over and build it for OS 2. So we have no reliance on Java whatsoever this time. The early work was really good. It was very helpful, and Bart was terrific. We had a great conversation. He sent me over an entire email thread that dated back to 2007 that was just chock full of information and good reminders for Paul because he had to remember some of that stuff. But we have a really solid list of people working on this. Next. Anyone have any questions about it? Yeah, it's kind of dry. It's like authentication, really. I went to a Kerberos conference not too many months ago, and it was for AFS and Kerberos. Anyone here know what AFS is? Andrew File System, developed at Andrew Carnegie University, isn't it?
Carnegie University.
Yeah. And it's a distributed file system. And there was an early build for OS2, by the way, of AFS.
Yeah.
But AFS has Kerberos support built into it. So when you want to authenticate to this distributed file system that's running on 15 different servers around the world, you do a Kerberos authentication, and now you can access that file system on any of those servers. So Kerberos is tightly tied to current versions of AFS. And they had an entire week at their conference. And I only spent one day there, but it was amazing. And I got to meet some great people. And it's always fun to mention to a bunch of gearheads that I work on OS2. Well, OS2, I remember OS2. And then, of course, the conversation starts. And so this is how we meet new people who might be interested in either coming back to the platform or getting involved with the platform. Because the one thing about a lot of these people is that, yeah, you know, I've been hacking this Linux code for about 5 years. I'd like to look at something else. And next thing you know, you got a guy who's bringing a different skill set to our platform. And he's got the understanding that we need, that we don't have in such abundance. So it was a great experience. I met some really good people. And now, of course, the trick is to follow up on that. But I realize it's kind of a dry subject. I think the thing that was most interesting for me at the conference was when we started talking about ticket renewal. Because when you talk about authenticating and getting a ticket, and the ticket's going to expire, and you think about an end user who may not be an educated end user, and that end user is going to use the machine all day long, and that ticket's going to expire, and the end user is going to try to run a directory on drive F, and nothing's going to come back because the ticket expired. Maybe you don't want the ticket to expire. Maybe you want to renew that ticket automatically, somehow, for that user. We talked about different methods of renewing the ticket automatically, and there are some interesting things in the Linux world because it's a problem for them too. It's not just a problem for OS2 users using a ported application. It's part of the design of Kerberos. So we talked about how to get around those issues to make it less cumbersome for end users, which is a big thing for Arganoa, as I think everyone knows now, at least if you didn't know before, making things less cumbersome for end users. So that was the sort of the gem that I came away with at that conference, that and the people who I met. But I know it's not really a glamorous thing.
Like when you're sitting at your Windows machine and you walk away.
I don't have a Windows machine.
Say one is sitting at your Windows machine. And you've logged, in the morning you've logged in, uses Kerberos to authenticate you. You walk away to get a cup of coffee, you come back and it's locked because the time's up, there's this lockup screen up. And then you unlock it. Now when you do that, are you...
That's very interesting to mention that. Extremely interesting, because when we were talking about those methods for renewing the tickets, one of the things that came up is you can set your screensaver to lock the machine on Windows and on Linux. And when you type in your password to unlock the screen, it will get you a new ticket. So you're not really renewing your ticket, you're asking for a new ticket.
And is that actually what happens?
It can be configured to do that. One of those utilities does exactly that. It works with the Linux screensaver to go ahead and fetch you a new ticket when you unlock the screen on your machine, which is terrific. That's one of the ideas that
It's an easy way around it. I mean, I forget whether you can set that to be 24 hours or not. I don't remember.
I'm not sure. I mean, we have to look at it with the tools that we have on OS2.
Right. Does OS2 have any lock like screen?
Sure, we have a screen lock, and it's part of Google Screensaver, and it's tied into the WPS very nicely. So you can lock up the screen and then unlock it with a password. So we would need to do something a little more. We need to modify that code a bit in order to be able to support this type of ticket regeneration, but it's certainly within the realm of possibility.
And that's a slick way to take care of that.
That's a very slick way to do it. The other way to do it is really with a cron job, and you just set a cron job to time the thing, and every so many hours go ahead and get a new ticket. The problem is then you have to rely on the end user to ultimately stop the cron job or shut the machine off. Otherwise, the ticket will constantly be renewed, and you have that same perpetual log-on issue. I mean, look, anyway, nothing is a panacea. So if you're in an enterprise where a screensaver is not what's normally used, you need to educate the admins to start using a screensaver. At least have the thing go to black with a lock on it. I mean, maybe it's using a screensaver, but it's not using a lock, so I have to educate them to use a lock just to renew the tickets. And explain, well, it's more than just saving your old CRT that you want to burn out as fast as possible and replace it with an LCD. So, yeah, there are a number of ways around the ticket renewal and expiration issue. It's a condition that needs to be addressed in order to use this in any real production environment.
And this only is in the service so far anyway of this Samba client that you use. That's the world in which this exists.
Well, right now, that's the only Kerberos-aware application that we have on OS2.
Like I use DB2 for example. That exists only in that older world of UPM. That's how it authenticates stuff.
Correct.
And it doesn't, you're not allowed to plug something else in.
Correct. I mean, obviously, the goal would be to replace all of that older, less secure stuff with something like Kerberos. It's that type.
I mean, you have an idea, does LAN manager or peer have a DLL that provides the authentication service?
Does it have a DLL which provides it?
You know, like it uses
It's
probably...
not pluggable.
What?
It's not, maybe a DLL, but it's not pluggable.
But,
It's not
like it probably uses UPM,
The best that
right?
we can do is provide a forwarder so that when the authentication is made, we tell peer that there is a valid authentication that's already been made. Behave as though there's been a valid authentication. That's the best we can do. We're not going to be able to Kerberize IBM peer. It's not going to happen. And you could, even if you Kerberized it, as far as file sharing and whatnot, it's still going to be doing SMB. It's not going to be doing SMB3.
Right.
So it doesn't take the place of a Samba 4 client.
So, you know, when I install ACS, I always just check all three of those boxes about the LAN jump, start this, do whatever. Can you uninstall that stuff easily? I've never really tried.
Easily? No.
Oh, okay. So you probably don't want to check that
You
stuff
can
these
turn
days
it off, though.
by not starting it?
Correct.
Oh, in the startup folder?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, that would be my recommendation, is to just turn it off, so it doesn't start the peer services automatically. Even if there's nothing on the other side. Any other questions?
Another question, a comment. We are approximately 1 minute from the start of the 5:30 kickback for those staying in the hotel.
Perfect. See, so my extra time
Your
is well
baked potato awaits.
Do you want to explain what's going on this evening?
Yeah, I can, because my entire plan is already on the sheet. We've always had this room later. They get really upset if we have big OS2 conversations out in the lobby, so.
Oh, really?
We were kicked out of the lobby.
Well, I
last
don't know
place.
about here.
Yeah.
They did in St. Louis.
Oh, in St. Louis.
St. Louis.
I
So that's why it's here.
I
No,
missed
this
that
is
part.
Kansas, not Missouri.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're not in Kansas anymore, Tom.
Yeah. So
We
I
are.
said,
We are in Kansas.
The reality is we probably will get back together someplace, and the last time it was the lobby, but this room is ours, so
Yeah, so we can use this room
I just didn't
as late as we want.
yeah. I don't know how we're gonna arrange the locking and unlocking, is there anything to talk for dinner and come back?
Well, what we should do is we should lock it up, and when people want to come back in and use the room, go to the front desk and ask someone to unlock the door.
Yeah, there you go.
Again, our concern for security is not with anyone in this room. It's not with any of our attendees. Our concern with security is with people who aren't here for Warpstock.
Yeah,
But they're here for the projector.
Yeah.
or any computers.
You know, the projector is cabled to the table.
Right.
Kryptonite.
Only once.
So will somebody be here? I mean, it's listed as.
So let's meet here at 7.
And so desperate people should come here seeking help, or it's just a place to come and lay on your stuff?
Neil, do you want to answer that?
I don't even understand the question.
You got it listed as help/socialize.
Yeah,
What he's asking is, he's got machines he wants to bring down, it's not the time.
oh,
Yeah.
well, you know, if you can find somebody to volunteer to help you, yeah.
We
Yeah,
meet here at 7.
Yeah.
Do we need to talk about
Let's see if we can
talk
fix something.
tomorrow? Do you want me to
We can
contribute
repeat
anything
it.
to your speech about voice?
I've got some signals.
It's actually brought
Need some help.
What I have is there.
I just got one. You'll be able to sort of.
Oh, you don't need me.
Let's see what's happening.
Thank
you.
I don't even know what he's gonna talk about.
Fine, you don't.
Thank you.